Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. In the last class we discussed about growth in height and weight. We also discussed some special growth features and we looked some differences in rate of growth. Today we will discuss about the motor development of a child. Basically, motor development refers to the development of a child's bones, muscles and ability to move around and manipulate his or her environment. You can observe that virtually all parents equally await mastery of new motor skills, recording with pride when their infant first holds up their heads, reach for objects, sit by themselves, and walk alone. Parents' enthusiasm for these achievements makes perfect sense. With each new motor skills, baby master their bodies and the environment in a new way. For example, sitting upright gives infant a brand new perspective on the world because he can see the things. Reaching enables babies to find out about objects by acting on them, and when infants can move on their own, their opportunities for exploration multiplies. Babies' motor achievements have a powerful impact on their social relationships as well. Certain motor skills, such as reaching and pointing, permits infants to communicate more effectively. Finally, babies' delight, babies' laughter, smiling, and babbling as they work on new motor competencies triggers pleasurable reactions in others, which encourages infants' efforts further. Motor skills, emotional and social competencies, cognition, and language develop together and support one another. Further, motor development can be divided into two broad categories. One is gross motor development and the second is fine motor development. Gross motor development refers to control over actions that help infants get around in the environment, such as crawling, standing, and walking. On the other hand, fine motor development has to do with smaller movements, for example, reaching and grasping. Motor development also involves how well children's muscles work, and this is very important for children. This is referred to as muscle tone. Children need a balanced muscle tone in order to develop their muscles and use them with ease when they are sitting, standing, walking, rolling, running, or doing any other activities or actions. Motor development can be understood as the way children learn to use their bodies and their ability to do the tasks they want to do. For example, children use their muscles to do small, precise tasks, for example, cutting, which is a fine motor skill, and muscles are also used for larger tasks, for example, running. And running is considered as a gross motor task. Developing gross motor skills and fine motor skills gives your child the building blocks he needs to skip and play or do any activities. According to dynamic systems theory of motor development, mastery of motor skills involves acquiring increasingly complex system of actions. When motor skills work as a system, separate abilities blend together, each cooperating with others to produce more effective ways of exploring and controlling the environment. For example, control of the head and upper chest combine into sitting with support, and standing, stepping, and improved upright postural control unite into walking. Each new skill is a joint product of the following factors. Number 1 is central nervous system development, and number 2, the body's movement capacities. Number 3, the goals the child has in mind. And number 4, environmental supporters for the skill. Change in any element makes the system less stable, and the child starts to explore and select new, more effective motor patterns. When a skill is first acquired, infants must refine it. For example, one baby just starting to crawl often collapsed on her tummy and moved backward instead of forward, and soon she figured out how to propel herself forward by alternately pulling with her arms and pushing with her feet. As she experimented, she perfected the crawling motion. As they attempt a new skill, most babies move back and forth between its presence and absence, and related previously mastered skill become less secure. A novice walker might take a few steps on Monday, then not to do again until next few days, and then not again until the following week. As the baby experiments with different postures, his body adjusts and it requires a balance. As movements are repeated thousands of times, they promote new connections in the brain that governs motor patterns. Let's talk about a little bit more about gross motor development. Gross motor development involves the development of large muscles in the child's body, and these muscles allow to sit, walk, stand, and run, among other activities. Gross motor skills are the skills your child needs to move her body and do different activities that use her arms and legs. Further, gross motor development refers to control over actions that help infants get around in the environment, such as standing, crawling, and walking, etc. So these are some main points about gross motor development. Children develop their large motor muscles before their smaller muscles. Therefore, crawling and walking, running, and all these activities will progress first, and the activities relating to cutting and weaving will develop later. Simply doing activities that use your child's larger muscles will help further to develop of them. Let's talk about fine motor development. Fine motor development involves the small muscles of the body, especially in the hand. Fine motor development has to do with smaller movements, for example, reaching and grasping. Further, fine motor skills refer to the child's abilities to use his hands and feet and his coordination with his fingers and toes. Grasping, using scissors, opening or closing hands, or throwing something, or clapping, catching, folding, unfolding, all these activities are examples of fine motor development or fine motor skills. Fine motor skills develop well after the larger motor skills. Of all motor skills, reaching may play the greatest role in infants' cognitive development. By grasping things, turning them over, and seeing what happens when they are released, infants learn a great deal about the sights, sounds, and feel of the object. Small muscle control is important because there are many everyday tasks that require use of these small muscles. For example, if you are cutting something or writing or tying your shoelaces, these are few examples of activities that require small muscles control. Without small muscles control, modern living would be very difficult. So these skills are very important to learn. This is important to know about motor development in infancy. Reaching is very important at this stage, and reaching enables to find out about objects by acting on them. Reaching and grasping, like many other motor skills, start out as gross, diffuse activities and move towards mastery of fine movements. Babies' motor achievements have a powerful impact on their social relationships. In infancy, certain motor skills such as reaching and pointing permit infants to communicate more effectively with their elders. Motor skills, emotional and social competencies, cognition and language develop together and support one another. We have discussed this point in our previous classes that all the developmental domains interact with each other and they are interrelated. They develop together and support one another. The infant's reaching does not depend simply on the guidance of the hand and arm by the visual system, but is controlled by proprioception, the sensation of movement and location based on simulation arising from bodily sources such as muscle contractions. Newborns also make poorly coordinated swipes, called pre-reaching towards an object in front of them. But because of poor arm and hand control, they rarely contact the object. Like newborn reflexes, pre-reaching drops out around 7 weeks of age when babies begin to improve in eye movements involved in tracking and fixating on objects, which is essential for accurate reaching. At about 3 to 4 months, as infants develop the necessary eye, head, and shoulder control, reaching reappears as purposeful forward arm movements in the presence of a nearby toy and gradually improves in accuracy. By 4 months, infants reach for a glowing objects in the dark. Reaching improves as depth perception advances and as infants gain greater control of body posture and arm and hand movements. By 7 months, the arms become more independent and infants reach for an object by extending one arm rather than both. By about 9 months of age, infants can adjust their reaching to take into account moving object, and when infants can sit upright on their own, they acquire the ability to transfer objects from hand to hand. The ulnar grasp is primitive form of grasping in which infants' fingers close against their palm. The fingers seem to act as a whole, acquiring the use of the palm in order to hold an object. And in these pictures, you can see the examples. By around the end of the first year, infants graduate to using the pincer grasp, wherein they use their index finger and their thumb in a possible manner, resulting in more coordinated and finely tuned grip. And in these pictures, you can see the examples of pincer grasp. After that, the ability to manipulate objects greatly expands. The 1-year-old can pick up resins and blades and many other stuff with his finger and thumb. These pictures are presenting clearly the difference between different types of grasp. So in this picture you can see ulnar grasp. In this picture, see that how child is using his thumb and finger, and this is called pincer grasp. And the third one is radial grasp, and you can compare all these pictures.